and welcome to Kantipur News Talk. I am Prarambha Dahal, and today we have with us Mr. Amrit Mathur, who is popularly known as the ultimate insider of Indian cricket. Well, he has spent time in the administration. He has been in the management committees of different historic tours of India, also in the World Cup organizing committees. He has been an advisor to an IPL team. He is served in the capacity of Chief Operating Officer of Delhi Daredevils. He is also an author, a journalist, and he has written this book, brilliant work of literature as well, Pitchside, My Life in Indian Cricket. So we welcome Mr. Amrit Mathur at Kantipur Television. What brings you to Nepal?
Well, I came on a private visit. I'm aware of Nepal in many different ways, about its cricket, about its fantastic geography, the tourist sites. So I thought it was a long time that I should come and see for myself.
Is this your first time here?
I've been here earlier, but on a very short trip. So this time was better. I went to Kathmandu, I went to Pokhara. So it's been fantastic.
Well, can you please share in brief about your involvement in this beautiful sport, cricket?
Well, I had a long innings, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
I started very early in the BCCI, and I was perhaps one of the youngest managers of the Indian team way back in 1992. So since then, it's been a long journey, and I've been working in different capacities. I've worked as a member of the BCCI. I've been on the World Cup committee. I've been a general manager with the BCCI, a team manager. And apart from cricket, I've also been an advisor to the Ministry of Sports in India, and also the Secretary of the Sports Authority of India. So I've looked at sport. My life has been a sort of journey through sports, but focused primarily on cricket. Mm-hmm. That's been my major interest.
Well, the real all-rounder of cricket in general, like Sunil Gavaskar once.
Well, I've just been lucky that I've been given various responsibilities over the years. I've worked with a whole lot of people, administrators, from Mr. Madhurav Sindhya to Mr. Dalmia to Mr. Srinivasan, and in the long journey, I've made good friends.
Mm-hmm. Some enemies as well?
Sorry?
Some enemies as well?
I'm sure. That's something you can't avoid. Mm-hmm. But I think the friends outweigh the enemies. Mm-hmm. I think I've been lucky that I've made good friends in cricket, from legends going back to Gavaskar and Kapil Dev to more recent cricketers. And I've just been lucky to be associated with something which is of deep interest to me. And it became a career.
True. Well, what an amazing career that you've had. But in terms of working with the government, you've been involved with the Ministry of Sports as an advisor. You mentioned BCCI in different capacities as well. So, what is the role of the government in ensuring the development of sports in general, not just cricket?
See, it's pretty simple actually. The government of India or any other government makes policy. Mm-hmm. Then they also have their own development programs, which they execute through an arm. In India, it's the Sports Authority of India, which executes the government policies of development, talent spotting, grassroots development, looking after elite sports, looking after recreational sport. So the entire space of sport, the policy guidelines and direction is from the government. Mm-hmm. And then it's executed through its own agency, also in coordination with all the sports federations, like the cricket board, the hockey, football, etc. So it's a tripartite thing, the government on one side, the Sports Authority and the federations. That is the structure. I think something similar is also in Nepal.
Yeah, we do have the Ministry of Youth and Sports, we have the National Sports Council, and then like you mentioned, the federations, the associations of each and every other sport that we can have. So, talking about sport and its contribution to the country, like we've seen sports doing brilliant things for India, not just in terms of producing talented athletes, to say, but its role in terms of national economy, tourism, to be specific, diplomacy as well, because we've seen sports bring countries together, not just in India or in the subcontinent, but even in other parts of the world. So how does sport contribute in terms of economy, tourism, diplomacy and other aspects?
I think you touched upon all the things that sports can do. And you have to look at sports in different sort of verticals. Sport in itself is a very positive activity for the youth, for fitness, health. We know about all that. Character building, team spirit. Apart from that, it is something which is a morale booster for the country. If the Nepali team does well, everybody feels good. So I think it has a great contribution to make to the morale
the national happiness as well.
Absolutely. So if the team is done well, everybody gets up in the morning feeling happy. So I think that is also a very important aspect of modern sport. It's hugely competitive, but it has bearing on the national image, the national mood, and also in terms of the national identity. We know how football in Brazil are so closely connected. Cricket in India are so closely connected.
It's a religion now.
So it's part of the national identity and its being. Thirdly, I think sport is also now, as you mentioned, soft power. You know, just as Indian films travel across the world and Shah Rukh Khan is a global hero.
Icon.
Similarly, cricket is India's soft power. So if India reaches out to the world in different countries, cricket is a very useful instrument for that. So you have to look at sports from different angles, and whichever angle you look at it from, whether it's the commercial side, whether it's the soft power, whether it's diplomacy, whether it's national happiness, I think it's a major factor.
Well, since you've worked with BCCI and Indian cricket for such a long period of time, how do you see the transition or development of cricket in terms of phases since its inception until now?
Well, there are, you know, we must realize that cricket has always been very important in India. You know, there's been phenomenal following for hundreds of years, you know, at least 120, 30 years.
People used to listen to the commentary on radio.
Yeah. Listen, India first played a test match in 1932. It's almost 90 years. So there has been a strong base for cricket, but there have been different sort of defining moments where it's grown. I think the one major defining moment was the 1983 World Cup win. Kapil
Dev was the hero of it.
Because that ignited interest in cricket at a much higher level. That is also the time when 50-over cricket became popular. That is also the time when color television came in. That is also the time the economy started looking up. So everything sort of combined to give cricket a major boost. Since '83, it's been a growth, steady growth. But again, there have been defining moments like the T20 World Cup win under Dhoni, and then the IPL. That's been the most recent game changer. So I think these are sort of milestones of development of cricket in India. Who knows what the next step would be?
Well, things only look better and good for Indian cricket right now, also with the women's team. So how do you see the development of women's cricket in India?
Well, it's been more recent, but again, there's great energy, there's great support for women's cricket, and the progress made in the last 5 years has been phenomenal. Certainly, we have the top, say, 10 female cricketers who are also national icons. You know, they are known in the media, people follow them, they are professionals, they get endorsements. So awareness about women's cricket has grown, and there too the WPL has been a trigger for that latest spurt in terms of growth and development.
Well, that is an impressive development of cricket just south of Nepal. So how aware are you in terms of cricket in Nepal in general, the progress Nepal has been making, and the fan following of the sport in the country?
Listen, I've been following Nepali cricket for a while, but from a distance. I don't know too much detail, but I know that the progress made by the Nepali cricket team has been phenomenal. The kind of growth they've had, the kind of support they have, and their achievements have been really, really remarkable. And to be playing in the World Cup is itself a major accomplishment. And what is most encouraging about Nepal is, I think, two things in my opinion. One, that the players who play are Nepalese. It's not like the US, which we have seen in the World Cup, or all the teams from Oman and Uganda and Zimbabwe. So you know, they look like a United Nations team, but Nepali cricket is fueled and progressed by Nepali talent. So I think that's a major, major plus. The other major plus is the fan following you have, the support cricket has for the support Nepal has for cricket. Now, that is something distinct. If you look at all the associate countries, forget associate countries, even if you look at test playing countries, I don't think many countries can match Nepal's enthusiasm and support for cricket.
We're witnessing that at the ongoing ICC.
Yeah, we saw the first game and it was sold out with everybody wearing Nepali jerseys. Now, to sell out a game in America is a major achievement. I think only India can do it, apart from Nepal. So not just that, I saw some footage and media reports about people following the game on a giant screen.
True, it was in Nepal
Kathmandu
itself, yes.
So I think that is something which sets Nepal apart from other countries, that you have phenomenal support in terms of fans, and I'm sure if that can lead to more corporate support, then you are on the right path. But the base is strong, and I see only positive things for Nepal cricket in the future.
Well, talking about the way progress was made in terms of cricket in India and the factors that you've mentioned in Nepal, the fan support and the original Nepali talent's involvement in cricket in Nepal. So what role should the government of Nepal, Ministry of Youth and Sports, the National Sports Council and the Cricket Association of Nepal, the federation which looks after the governing body of cricket, play in ensuring that the momentum is caught and then, like you mentioned, the graph only moves forward?
I think there are some things which every country needs and every sport needs. So I think in the, if we talk only about cricket, I think there's one gap which I see. Maybe I'm not entirely correct, but I think there has to be a structure of red ball cricket, because excessive focus on 50-over cricket and 20-over cricket is good, because it's easier to learn, it's easier to take up.
It does not take much time.
It doesn't take too much time. It's easier to play. It's easier to organize. But to develop quality cricketers, you need that base of a red ball tournament. Something like the Ranji Trophy, 3-day tournament or 4-day tournament. And I think also you need some more commercial support for the game.
Well, so we have had domestic tournaments like EPL, DPL, even the CAN has come up with its own T20 tournament. But the focus has only been limited on, like you mentioned, the shorter white ball format, majorly 20 overs. For 50 overs, we have Prime Minister's Cup. But the involvement and the interest from the private sector has been very limited. And also the involvement from the authorities has not been that impressive. So what is the particular thing that we need to focus for the men's and the women's tournament as well?
Listen, two things help in this. One, if you discover a star, so immediately more attention comes towards that sport. If you had a Virat Kohli or you have something like an Abhinav Bindra, who's the Olympic gold medalist, the sport receives a major boost and everything falls into place. So one way is to discover a talent of that quality, which will attract everybody's attention. The other is that some serious work needs to be done. You need infrastructure, you need competition, you need support, you need your players to be looked after, so that they're encouraged to take that sport up. You are lucky that people are playing and people are following. But to consolidate that and to really become a major force in world cricket, there is a journey and there are certain steps that need to be taken.
So we have to ensure that there's a career for cricketers. The grassroots have to have the priority has to be there for the grassroots as well. So how do you see the impact that school level cricket has had in the other parts of the world, and what can Nepal learn from that?
Listen, it varies. Different countries follow a different trajectory. England has been the home of cricket, but at the moment they're struggling because nobody's playing cricket, they're all playing football. So they're trying to reach out to schools that you mentioned, and they're reaching out to non-British citizens, the Asian population, to get more and more people to get into cricket. Now, Nepal doesn't have that problem. Everybody's playing cricket. India doesn't have that problem. Everybody's playing cricket. So I think you just need to give them a platform, give them an incentive and encouragement. Now, in today's time, incentive, encouragement, motivation is money. Let's be clear about this. There's no bigger motivation than money. So if you have people playing sport, whether it's cricket or volleyball is a national game. So you need to reward those people who are playing. Whether it comes from the government, whether it comes from a corporate sector or whether it comes from a patron. But there has to be some definite monetary incentive for players.
So in that context, now let's switch to what is happening right now in the world. The talk of the entire cricketing fraternity is the ICC 2020 World Cup. So how have you seen the performance of associate nations in particular?
Well, it's been surprisingly good. The so-called senior established test teams have struggled in some games, and Pakistan lost. So I think the gap is reducing. And the gap will obviously be less in a 20-over format compared to, say, a 3-day game or a 5-day test
Because
match.
even an over or one
2
performance,
overs, one good spell, 20 good minutes for a batsman can change the game. But it's encouraging that they are competitive. Many felt that they'll be one-sided, it'll be mismatch in terms of quality, but that hasn't been the case till now. So I think that's great. This is the first time 20 teams are playing. I think the ICC has taken a cue from football, where 40 teams are going to be playing the next World Cup, 48 I think. So I think it's very encouraging to see the so-called associate members, weaker teams pushing the tougher teams, and I think it's good for the game.
Well, now let us talk about Nepal in particular. So this is our second 2020 World Cup. After a hiatus of 10 years, it took us that gap. So how do you see the gap and what do you think should be done to ensure that Nepal, which keeps on playing a lot of 2020 matches, in fact we play more T20 matches than some of the test nations as well, right? So what should be done to make sure that we are regularly featuring at the 2020 World Cups?
Listen, there's no magic formula. At the same time, you know, it's a journey where you will get a setback, you will make progress, or you might slide down a bit. Those things will happen. But I think you should take heart from what Afghanistan has done. You know, they are a serious country in terms of cricket.
We used to play against them on a regular basis
but
now.
Look at the progress they made in 10 years.
And beating New Zealand now.
Yeah, and they are going to be very competitive even in Test cricket. If you look at the quality of players and the exposure they've had, I think that's what maybe the next step for Nepal is needed. More players getting more exposure abroad, in terms of whether it's professional leagues, whether it's with county sides or state associations, whatever. I think some more exposure, quality exposure, and I think I'll go back to what I said earlier, that you need a domestic structure which supports 3-day red ball cricket.
The longer format of cricket.
Yeah, because your basics become stronger, and then you're able to adapt to whatever format you play.
And the conditions as well.
Yeah, conditions, format. So I think the basic purpose of any national domestic structure is to prepare people who can play for Nepal and be competitive. So I think red ball cricket, I think, is something which you should look at.
That should be the foundation for ensuring development.
Well, that's how we've seen that most of the countries that have progressed have come through that path. You know, people look at Afghanistan and we look at only their T20 success, but they also have a very serious red ball tournament and a structure which you don't hear about, but I'm sure the players who are coming through have been developed and they've grown from the experience they've gained in red ball cricket.
Well, we've talked about the structure that fuels the development of cricket, but you've seen and worked with so many legendary cricketers, right? So what should Nepali cricketers of the current national team and at the same time the aspiring Nepali cricketers learn in terms of the professional skills and the managerial aptitude from these big stars so that they can not just improve their on-field performance but also have that managerial skills and aptitude?
Listen, I'm sure they're already doing it. No, they play a lot of international cricket. They're aware of what other people are doing. You got a good coach, and I think there's nothing really missing. And it's a matter of time that everything comes together, and you step up to the next level. So there's no sort of magic formula. I think you're on the right path. There's so many positives in terms of Nepali cricket, and it's not, I think, a long way ahead where you will be a major force.
Well, great. Now let us talk about the international governing bodies of cricket, ICC, the Asian Cricket Council. Well, we've had support from ICC and ACC also in terms of resources that are required for development of cricket. So let us look at BCCI now. BCCI has extended its support for promising teams. Even Afghanistan has had the kind of support and backing from BCCI. So what can Nepal and Nepali cricketers can expect or should seek from ICC, ACC and the BCCI to ensure that we have the kind of red ball tournaments and the grassroots development program that actually exponentially help in development of cricket?
Listen, already there's a structured scheme for the ICC and the ACC to support various member countries. So as you mentioned, you receive support, financial and otherwise, from the ICC. I think you also used to get coaches deputed by the ACC and the ICC, which is something which they do to other countries also. So I think there's a format, there's a structure which is happening. I think you'll have to maybe have bilateral arrangements, whether with the BCCI or with any other country, in terms of more exposure for your cricketers. surprisingly, even a country as established as England is doing this. Their off-season camps, their training programs for the counties are by and large held in the UAE and Abu Dhabi, because they take advantage of the great facilities that are there, and also the more favorable weather. So when there is no cricket in England, especially in winter, most of the teams are training in Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Sharjah. So I think maybe more bilateral contacts with different countries, and also a more serious program of what is called high performance group. That if you identified a certain number of players, apart from the main Nepali team, that's maybe the A team, and to give them exposure.
We only recently have instituted Nepal A side, which also keeps on playing the A teams of other nations. So we've just only had that culture, right?
But this is something India did very successfully under Rahul Dravid, because before he became a coach of the Indian team, he was actually mentoring, guiding, looking after the A side and the under-19 side. So what happened was that the BCCI identified a certain pool of cricketers, the youngsters who were talented,
to increase the bench strength of
and
the team,
also to guide them and put them on the right path, because those guys have already done well in domestic cricket, but to be made familiar with the latest trends of fitness, performance enhancement, the latest training methods, mentoring, mental strength, coaching. So nobody better than Rahul Dravid to be a guide to young players. So that was a very useful thing, and it has given results to the BCCI in India, that you have an under-19 team which is successful, and those people transition then quickly to senior cricket. And there the IPL helps, that if you've done well at the under-19 level, you get picked up, you get more exposure in the IPL, then you have somebody like Rahul Dravid mentoring you, so your path becomes easier.
We've seen players like Rinku Singh, Sanju Samson when he initially came in.
So
many young players. Now you probably can make like 5-6 teams of India. We at one point of time we had India playing in England and Sri Lanka at the same time.
We had 2 teams touring internationally, which I thought was unique. I don't think any other country has done that.
Never had happened in the history of cricket.
I think BCCI has been excellent in having a very robust domestic structure. We have the biggest platform for cricketers. We have 38 first-class teams, and we have an under-14, under-16, under-19, under-23 tournaments, and then you have the Ranji Trophy, and then you have the T20 tournaments and the 50-over tournament. So this is the biggest platform in the world for cricket. And now, compared to India, Australia has 8 first-class teams. England has 18. I think the amount of cricket played in India alone is more than the cricket played in the rest of the world.
True.
So when you have so much cricket played, and you are providing a platform for talent to come and perform, obviously the good guys will come up. And that's why you see quality in the IPL and in the senior team.
Well, you've touched upon the age group tournaments. Well, Nepal, interestingly, has featured in a lot of under-19 cricket World Cups, but we've just not been able to, convert that into transition for the national team and the ODI tournaments. We've lacked in terms of, like you mentioned, the red ball cricket tournament. We had the aim of being a destination as soon as possible, but that has been pushed because of these different factors. So how do you see the progress made in the age group tournaments, but the failure in ensuring that the talent pool of the under-19 team and the World Cups that we've been playing at and performing and doing well as well is retained, or in addition to that, groomed further so that they can do well in the senior squad as well?
Well, this is a problem every country faces. It's not peculiar to Nepal. That somebody who might be outstanding at under-19 doesn't make it to the senior team, because the gap is big. It's huge. The quality and the competitiveness of an under-19 tournament compared to senior cricket, even Ranji Trophy. Very often a quality India under-19 player doesn't succeed in Ranji Trophy also, let alone play for India. So that will happen. But if there is a good system in place, you help that talent to make the transition and to go step by step. So that's the challenge every country faces. And ultimately, it's the competition which will ensure that the top people rise. The best talent rises to the top. Let me give you an example. We've been playing Test cricket since 1932. we are a country of 140 crores or whatever.
Yeah.
And in all these 90 odd years, only 320 people have played for India. Now look at the numbers who are actually playing cricket. And in all these 90 years, only 320 have made it to the Indian Test team. So that shows how difficult it is. That also shows that if you are one of those 320, you are superbly skilled. You have to be outstanding and excellent in your field to make it. So it's not easy, but it's the job of the administrators, the people who are governing the sport, to make sure that the talent which has come up at the under 19 level is not lost. So that's why you need to fill that gap. And you need something like a Dravid or the program of looking after your A team or the under 19 squad, the high performance group, and make sure that you don't lose out on the talent.
So you've touched upon how only a few make it to the top, and in the national team, we have so many players, the French players who are in and around the teams, but they probably do not get that opportunity to play for the country. So what is a suggestion for them to like keep going at their aspirations of playing for the national team?
I think you've touched upon a very important point, because in sport, whether it's cricket or anywhere else, only few make it. The failure rate is huge. Even if you look at India, we have 10 IPL teams, and in the 10 IPL teams, 18 Indian cricketers can be hired by the teams. So 18 into 10 is 180. There's only 180 people who are playing IPL and getting rewarded. The rest are also getting rewarded, but much less. But thousands and thousands are playing, maybe many more thousands are playing. So not everybody is making a successful living out of cricket. So you need a safety net. You need some kind of support for even those who do not make it. Now that is the major challenge also of the administrators, that while you support talent, and once they reach a certain stage, they look after themselves. But you also have to look after the people who are playing, because they are committing their lives, their youth, their all the energies to the sport. So that's also something which must attract the attention of the administrators. What do we do with people? Firstly, what do we do to make help people make it, and what do we do for people who are unable to make it? Now these are challenges of any sports administrators. So different sport in different countries handle it in different ways, and I'm sure you'll also find a way.
Well, talking about IPL, the two teams that made to the final did not even have a single player representing India at the World Cup, so that happens. Well, now franchise tournaments, so many of them happen around the world. So what is the impact in global cricket, the positives and the negatives?
Well, the positive is that you got more talent coming through. You discover new talent. From the IPL, you can see there's so many people who were not known suddenly,
global fame overnight.
So that's one positive, that you have more talent discovery, scouting, and then the support for them. So the sport becomes richer with more talent coming in. So that's a positive. The other positive also obviously the commercial side, that the players who get identified and get an opportunity get rewarded, which further motivates and inspires others to follow in their footsteps. For instance, in India, every Ranji cricketer is now trying to get an IPL contract, and he's working hard, he's becoming fitter, he's improving his skills. So that itself is a great plus. So I think there is a positive, there's a commercial success to the leagues, and that's why they're happening all over the world. Now, you might say that this will be ultimately at the expense of regular cricket. Something has to give, and maybe there will be less space for bilateral matches, less space for the 3 or 4 day national championships. But I think sport evolves. Your water finds its own level. So ultimately, the market and the compulsions of commercial competitive sport will decide the way forward.
Well, we've seen like some players prioritizing franchise cricket tournaments instead of playing for the country. So what impact is that?
That's also something which you have to sort of live with, because if I'm a young player and I get an opportunity to play 5 leagues and earn a certain amount of money, so I will obviously go that way. So it is a commercial benefits which the leagues now make available, and the opportunities which they give to a player. These things will happen. But at the same time, there is still that emotional connect and the pride of playing for your country. You might be a T20 star, you might be an IPL star, you might be a 100 star or whatever, the Big Bash star, but wearing the national colors, wearing the Nepali flag on your jersey or the Indian flag, that's a different sort of emotional high and also ultimate pride in terms of what you are doing. So I think there will be a balance between the professional commercial leagues and what is regular cricket as we understand, the World Cups and the bilateral contests. But ultimately, I think traditional cricket will have to give space more to the commercial league.
That's great. Now let us make a soft switch to fantasy sports. You've also been involved in fantasy. We've seen a lot of youth attention towards fantasy sports, whether it be the Fantasy Premier League of English Premier League or even in cricket tournaments. These days, even sports like Kabaddi have their fantasy sports. So what actually is fantasy sports and how have you seen the growth of fantasy sports in the last decade? Where is it going forward?
So there are two things. One is the professional league, as you mentioned, that the IPL kind of commercial formula imposed on different sport. So you have a Kabaddi league, you have a
volleyball as well.
Volleyball, wrestling, multiple leagues. The football league, there is a hockey league starting, there's a rugby league starting, there's a Kho-Kho league, there's various others. Now, the IPL has shown the way of a sport to grow, for more talent to come in, for money to come in, for the corporates to have a role. So that's one path sport has taken. The other is what we call fantasy sport, something like Dream 11 or My 11 Circle. Now, that's I think also a unique development in the growth of sport. The key thing here is the involvement and the empowerment of the fan. Now, earlier the fan was somebody who bought a ticket, went to the match, or sat in front of a television screen and watched a game.
Or the radio commentary.
Or the radio commentary. He followed the sport. But he was a passive consumer of sport. He has no real involvement in the sport, as so to say. Ticket kharid liya, watch test match or cricket, whatever. Now, the new fan, he's got a mobile in his hand. He's got access to data. He's got access to all information about every player. Now, the fantasy sport allows him to use his knowledge, his skill to form a team. And he's like a selector.
Like a manager.
A manager and a selector. Okay, today in a match A versus B, these 11 players I've chosen and they are the ones who will do well. Now, he's picking those players on the basis of the hard work he's done in terms of research,
the data analysis,
etc. So he's more involved in the game. He's and when he's playing and betting a small amount of money to enter a contest, he's got skin in the game. So from a position when he was a passive consumer of sport, now he's an active participant. So also the fan now has a voice. Fan has a voice through social media. You will recall the great outrage when Hardik Pandya shifted. For the first time, he received very negative sort of response from social media. So the fan is not only just watching cricket anymore. He has an opinion. He's forming a team and he's participating in contests. He's expressing his opinion about teams and transfers and players. Now, let me give you one more example of how important the fan has become. We already knew that the fan was key to the commercial side of the sport. If India is a strong cricket nation, it's because of the huge fan base we have. But recently in England, there was some move about some ownership transfer of football clubs. So the government stepped in saying that while these clubs are privately owned, they are part of England culture, social culture, football and the clubs. So the owners cannot take arbitrary decisions about their clubs, which they own.
Without the consent of the fans.
So they are thinking of a regulatory body where the fans ought to be consulted on key issues about the club. In case of players transfer, in terms of commercial decisions,
the infrastructure,
etc. So that's how the fan has become more important, not only commercially but also in terms of having a voice. So we are seeing all these trends emerging. Whether it is through the leagues, whether it is through the growth of social media, whether it's through just the identity and the support and the loyalty the fans have. So it's a landscape of sport is changing. commercially, in terms of all the attention, and it's more and more important. I think it's a great thing. The fans, have to be respected. In fact, they are the ones who are, in a way, owners of the teams. And that's again, the sports keeps evolving. The administrators have to, acknowledge these changes and adjust to these changes.
Great. Lastly, your comment on the fans of Nepal has been very well noticed. You've well noticed the performance of Team Nepal and the support that we have. So what is your message to the supporters of Nepali cricket?
Listen, I'm not the one to give any message, but I'm just very positive about Nepal cricket. I think next 10 years will be a major force, because everything that is needed for the sport is available. And the key thing is actually, talent, which is coming into the sport, which is voluntarily playing the sport. So I don't think there's a shortage of people playing cricket in Nepal. Secondly, the fan base and the huge support the country has for its cricket team, which is phenomenal. The other day I saw a tweet and a picture of just before the Nepal-Netherlands match, with the sports minister sitting in office wearing a Nepali team jersey.
Yes.
So I think that is phenomenal.
Even the parliamentarians.
Yeah, so that kind of support, I think, is a major sort of incentive for
but
the
they
team.
have yet to translate their.
It happens. You have to be patient. Listen, these things don't happen overnight. But as I said, the basic building blocks are in place. You do need more time. You need to be patient. But overall, I think it's only positive going forward.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mathur. It has been a great pleasure talking to you. Very enriching for myself as well, being an ardent follower of cricket. But it was a good experience, and I'm looking forward to reading the book in whole. And I wish you all the very best for your future endeavors.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
So that was Mr. Amrit Mathur with us. Keep watching Kantipur Television. Goodbye for now.